highway. Ooh. Give it a minute here. Gotta go through the intersection and then onto the highway. Am I gonna make it? Am I gonna make it? Am I gonna make it? Aha! Made it. .610 east, following it around to 10 east, and then we are on cruise from there out. Alright, you can go by. Alrighty. I am following YouTube rules. I have to announce that I don't read the screen when I'm driving, and I don't. That's something they're very particular about. So I will leave the comments until I stop. But I am just now picking up a load here in the rattiest part of the middle of southwest Houston in a very unkind neighborhood. Very ugly neighborhood. Normally when I pull into a shipper, I leave the van running. Not here. No, sir. I didn't get 10 feet from the van. I still shut it off and locked it. It's just really, really rough area. All right, I went to pick up 2 pallets of Sierra. Watching my GPS. It's supposed to be 2 pallets equaling 500 pounds, and it turned into 1 pallet, which is weird. Usually the load grows, it doesn't shrink. Well, this one shrank. But I'm heading to Concord, North Carolina. This load is due on Thursday. Today's Tuesday, it's due Thursday, but I'm just going to run it straight and be done with it, because I don't want to waste another day. I could be running loaded. And looks like I'm down to 0. I don't know what this guy's doing. Alright, here we go again. We'll start over here in a second. Alright. Sorry, I can see there's nobody on here, so I gotta wait a minute. Squeeze back over. I gotta go 6 miles on this, get to 10 and head east. Give me a minute here. Spent a gazillion dollars on the van here when I was home because the gas mileage was falling off, and the mechanic I worked with called Ford and said, okay, at 200,000 miles, what's the problem here? So they spent some money flushing my injectors out, replacing the spark plugs, the wires, and replacing or cleaning the mass airflow sensor. You see how the bridges here are different? This is Houston. Compare this to the East Coast. The bridge design here is just totally different. Alright, if you're just joining in, YouTube requires me to say this. I don't read the comments going down the road. They're very picky about that, because that's something that gets you in trouble. And I read into it, it also said don't do dangerous stuff, which I don't. And I don't drive fast, I don't zigzag, I don't road rage. I'm pretty laid back when I drive. But I just picked up a pallet, a rather heavy pallet, out of Houston, and I'm going to Concord, Massachusetts. Concord, North Carolina. And what was different about this time home is I had to do some VA doctor visits, and then I had to do some maintenance on this, including the fact that the van was getting atrocious gas mileage. Cruising on the open highway going 62, 63 miles an hour, which is my normal cruise, I was getting 22-ish, give or take a little. And it started tapering off here the last month or so, and it got down to 18 and a half, even at the most advantageous speeds. So I took it to my mechanic, and the van just rolled 200,000 miles. The engine is strong, the transmission's new. And I said, what is causing this? And the guy actually contacted Ford, and they said, at 200,000 miles, clean the mass airflow sensor. That's the little thingy that hangs down in the box, in the air box. And the problem is, it gets dirty in time, and it's telling the computer the wrong amount of fuel to mix with the air and whatnot. And he also said you need spark plugs and wires, which I did replace the spark plugs back at 109,000 when I bought the van. So I am now going to get the chance to test out my injectors that were cleaned, and the new spark plugs, new wires, and mass airflow sensor. but I was going to test it coming into Houston, but I was driving into a headwind, of course, because everywhere I go is a headwind. It's tradition. So we are on the 610 loop on the east side of town, working our way around to 10. This is the Houston area. It's kind of industrial, the older part of town, and I got just under 4 miles to go up here, and we're getting off on 10, and I am required to announce that I cannot read the questions and comments, so I can't do anything about that right now as long as I'm moving. This is a YouTube rule. I used to kind of keep an eye on it, but I'm not allowed to. So this is one of these ship bridges that goes uphill, and lets whatnot. But what happened weird this time off is I was off for a week, which scheduled, and I put myself back in service on Tuesday. Not Tuesday right now, last Tuesday, and it took until now to get a load, which is absolutely ridiculous. And I've never had to wait this long. I have had to wait in the past, but this is kind of ridiculous. So I have spent a week chopping at the bit trying to get back out here to start earning a living. And it is massively frustrating, but at least they got me a good load. I'm going to North Carolina. North Carolina is in the core area, the northeast part of the country, where I can start doing 200 and 300 mile runs going forward from there. There was a topic I covered a while back, a couple of streams back, about don't waste your time getting in arguments with idiots online, because you're not going to get anywhere. But sometimes you get drawn into a discussion over something, and the thing that it's still kind of chafing me a little bit, and I had talked about this the other day, back in the 1970s was the heyday of the hang glider. It's still out there, but it's kind of tapered off, and it was kind of a free-for-all. It was an unregulated hobby there. The feds weren't involved in it. And the biggest ingredients to be a hang glider is you got to have something to jump off of. And if you live in the flatlands, you have nothing to jump from. So some rather industrious person put a chainsaw motor on the front of a hang glider and stuck a blade on it, fired it up, and flew himself, or herself, I don't know which, to altitude. And then the engine ran out of gas, and then they glided down. And that started the ultralight industry. And it kind of spread from there. And the feds took a hands-off approach to that also. And they basically said, if the dry or empty weight of your flying contraption is less than 254 pounds, goes less than 55 miles an hour, has one seat, and can't carry more than 5 gallons of gas, you can go do whatever you want. Which, on the surface, seems like a wonderful idea, but underneath, it was a really bad idea, because they didn't regulate it at all, which means people who don't know how to fly were flying machines built by people who don't know how to build flying machines. And everything was about cheaper, so they were cutting corners. Instead of using aircraft grade fittings and aluminum, they were just using whatever was on the shelf. And then they were, instead of having 16 wing spars, they put in, 12, because it's cheaper. And then, of course, bunch of people died because that's what happened. So they clamped down on it. Now it's fairly regular. Okay, I got to go on 90 here. Again, this is a 610 loop east side of Houston. Whoa, 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 whoa. This is not good. All right. I can stop fast, but big trucks can't. Ooh, that was bad. Well, if you're ever in a line of trucks and the traffic starts flexing really hard like that, you always hit your flashers. That lets the big trucks know to back off. I just did that. Whoa, that was not good. Anyway, that industry, the ultralight industry, is now regulated, and the hang gliders are regulated. Well, I'm looking at something on YouTube, mentioned that, and it talked about a helicopter. Somebody's making a kit helicopter, and before I read that, it gave me flashbacks. Oh, so this clown's going to go up to the front and push his way into the single lane. Oh, that makes sense. So there was a company, and they may or may not be around right now anymore, but it was called Revolution. They made a helicopter called a Revolution 500, which was a single seat, comparatively speaking, inexpensive helicopter you could buy and build And the first 10 or 12 that were sold were destroyed instantly because the people who bought them put them together and went, I can fly that. No, you can't. So they ball them up and immediately destroy them. And that happened enough times that the company changed their policy and they started not sending you the tail rotor until you send them a copy of a pilot's license with your name on it. Because it's just, how do you sell your product if every one of your completed products is destroyed? You know. Ooh, this guy's stuck in the mud. Look at this on the right. It's a white car. Oops. Yeah, oops. Anyway, they sorted that out. Well, I'm playing on YouTube, and there's an ad for a helicopter, and it was one of those, yep, and you don't have to have a pilot's license. Oh, geez, here we go. And which is people translate into, you don't need to know how to fly. And until you've actually flown a helicopter, you don't it's impossible to explain to a non-helicopter person what's going on when you're flying a helicopter. And the closest I can get to explaining it is to say, look at somebody playing the drums. Just sit there and watch them. Right hand, left foot, right foot, you know, they're doing their thing. And now, pick up those drumsticks, now you do it. Are you going to sound like him or her? Are you even going to be in the general vicinity of having what they're doing? And the answer is no, because it takes quite a long time to train your body to kind of automatically do its own thing. And it's not something that just happens on the first time just because you watch somebody else do it. And that's as close as I can get to talking about flying. And I commented on that, you know, not having any actual operational flying skills in a helicopter, you're not going to get in and fly it. And immediately the gamers jumped up and started into but I play helicopter games on my home computer. I'm like, yeah, and I play Call of Duty on my home computer. And I'm pretty sure the Army's not going to let me go around basic training and put me in a special forces outfit. You know, I'm just saying. And these people who've never flown an aircraft or a helicopter try to convince themselves that they've got the skills to fly a real helicopter because they play on their home computer. And I'm sorry, not going to happen as much as you absolutely think so. And I've been going back and forth with these guys on this. And then some guy came up with these examples of, you know, people that jump in an airplane and fly without experience. And yes, that's happened quite a few times. There are many examples of people landing an airplane with no experience. There's many examples of people who've actually stolen airplanes by reading books about it or watching somebody else. You're not going to find that with a helicopter. There's no examples of somebody going, I can do that, and getting in a helicopter and flying away. There was one guy in Florida that tried to steal a medical helicopter, and his plan was he was going to steal it and fly up and down the coast. That was his plan. And he got as far as blowing the floats, which is a mechanical thing that requires no power, just a big handle. You pull the pin, pull the handle. That's as far as he got. And then these guys keep telling me, well, I've got thousands of hours of simulator time on my computer. And I said, well, put that on your resume and go apply for a job. I mean, holy crap, why spend $250,000 on flight training when you could sit at home and play on your two-dimensional computer? So I'm sorry, that's not how that works. And, you know, and I can tell you this because I've flown and did it for a career. You know, I played on computers. It's not the same thing. But that's still going on. So I guess at some point I'm going to have to drop the rope and let them. And that was how I ended it. I said, well, if you're convinced this is how it's going to happen, then go do it. Make sure you mount the phone a long distance away so you can catch what's going to happen. But you could try. Just make sure you film it for fun. Let me know how it goes. So that's the end of that. So I am finally back on the road. This is a 500-pound pallet, very low-lying pallet, and I'm taking it to North Carolina. I am going to run this probably straight through and deliver it in the morning. It's not due till Thursday, but when you have cargo, you want to get rid of it as fast as you can because you get back on the board and you get another load. So there's no reason to take your time and stroll, which is, I don't do that because you're out here to make money. You're not out here to socialize and be a tourist, but there are times you have to do both. I'm going to reset my mileage. Okay, the wind is not in my face. I want to see if this helped. All this money I spent on the engine here. This last time out. Let's see here. This is Interstate 10 eastbound, kind of in the outskirts of Houston, heading towards the Louisiana border. There's another cargo Expediter. That van right there that's got Mississippi tags, that's another Expediter. Probably an independent because he has no name on the side. So that was my exciting week. Did my work around the house. The cats treat me funny when I come home. It's like they don't know who I am, and then once they realize I live there, they want to hang out with me. And we have, my wife and I cut a little hole in the back wall and put a doggy door, but a kitty door, to a little corridor that goes out to an outdoor cat area where they can play without getting eaten by a hawk or something. And out front we have a cat condo, which is those things people started putting up to save, stray animals. It's like a little building. And we've got one of those in the front. And we put food out. And at this point we are pretty much feeding, 4 or 5 different cats. And we give all of them different names. And one we call Peekaboo has been terrified of us for weeks. And all of a sudden it's decided, since we have been feeding it on a regular basis, that we're okay. Came up and got some loving, so that was kind of a nice change. So Peekaboo and another cat named Blue, that's white, by the way, are the 2 main cats out there. We've got a handful. This is the middle loop coming up here. This is Beltway 8. We're going to pass under. Again, look at the style of the bridge. It's different from East Coast. It just looks different. The style they do, it's more decorative. This is kind of boring, in my opinion. Functional, but boring. It's steel on the bottom and then concrete on the top of the handrails, you can see. And again, I have to announce this. I don't read the questions in the comments, and people want to discuss things amongst themselves. That's perfectly fine, but I'm not allowed to watch it. YouTube rules. Over again. I try to stay to the right. I don't like getting tied up in the traffic with other people. But one of the things about this job is, especially when you're older, and there's gas on the right. See that sign, red sign, QT 211 for fuel right there. That's the difference, by the way, from the East Coast and down here. It's just gas is way cheaper. Of course, this is where it all comes from, but yeah, it's just way cheaper. All right, put that there. Again, I've seen a few younger people out here doing this, but generally speaking, most of the people that are out here expediting are 40 plus. A lot of them are 50 plus. And this kind of work wears on your body just from seeing a lot and bouncing in a seat. So chiropractor becomes your best friend. And this time home, I went to the chiropractor and told him what was going on. And he said, your L5, again, that's a spinal thing. He said your L5 is twisted. I was like, oh, that even sounds wonderful. So they brought over this place I go to all the time, and there's a bunch of different places, real popular chiropractor. And this one little girl works there. She weighs about $110, and she comes over, and I'm not the smallest guy in the room, but she climbs up and twists me and bounces on me, and it was like somebody's throwing a sponge at me because she doesn't have enough weight, enough mass to really do anything. And I kind of went, you might need somebody with a little more horsepower. And she kind of smirked and she left, and she brought back another female, and we'll just call her Helga the Destroyer. And Helga was, she was big, and Helga looked like an East German Olympian, female gymnast. And she twisted me and did a karate chop ginsu, and I think she broke the table through my body, because that thing in my lower back surrendered immediately, and now I feel a whole lot better, because I was hurting there for a while. Whoa, traffic slowing down again. This is getting silly. It is 12:30 local, and we're dealing with this. Let's see what happens here. Hold on. Kind of open for the open roads. When I was flying in the Gulf, I used to run back and forth along the Louisiana coast, Texas-Louisiana coast, back and forth. I did it for 14 years, so I was driving up and down these roads in my little car. There's a little bit of nostalgia here. Not a lot, but driving this area. What's the mileage doing? 21 and a half. That's okay, not great. Had fun hanging out with the wife. My mother had her birthday. That was kind of cool. I could still take her in a fist fight 2 out of 3 times. Which, I mean, she's fast, but I can still take her. No. You stay in your lane. You stay in your... Whoa! Pick a lane, dude. I actually Googled, or let me rephrase that. I chat GPT. What are the things to talk about when you're driving down the road for travel? We're in Texas right here. This is I-10, and it's a distance out here, but we're gonna hit the border here eventually on I-10. If you're going westbound and cross the border, you will see a sign on the side of the road for El Paso, which is on the other side of the state, and it literally says 983 miles away. That's quite a distance. To realize you could drive into Texas and drive 1,000 miles on one road, basically in a straight line, and in the same state. And that's something that a lot of people don't realize that haven't traveled the state, and you have people that live in the eastern states that don't get it. They think that, oh yeah, just an hour or 2 away. No, it's not. It's days away. And people in Europe don't grasp that. That's why electric cars, like the Volkswagen's making all this electric stuff, and they don't understand the size of the United States compared to Western Europe, because you can look this up. You can Google putting the state of Texas over Western Europe, and it covers the whole area like a blanket. That's just Texas. And that's just, there's this, they make the new Volkswagen bus, it's called a Buzz, B-U-Z-Z, Buzz ID. It's electric, and if they would put a motor in it, I would buy them. Because I think they're kind of be fun to have. And I drive between 8,000 and 10,000 miles a month on my trusty van. There was 1 week I put 4,300 miles on a vehicle in 1 week. And I have never seen a Volkswagen bus, the Buzz, on the road. Not one, ever. And they're for sale. And somewhere I read they're going to stop making the 26 models until the 25 models sell out, which, again, I have never seen one on the road. They might be out there, but I've never seen one. And if Volkswagen would, realize that what they're doing in Europe doesn't necessarily work here, and they put a little motor, a little turbo motor, or maybe that awesome 5-cylinder they made in it, they would sell a lot of them. But they're sticking to their guns, so you're trying to sell a product that nobody wants. Which is their fault. Like I said, I'd buy one. Up here, Pilot Flying J on the left and right. Remember, they merged years ago. And they also merged with something called 19. And that's where I normally get my fuel for my 10-cent a gallon discount and my shower credits. I don't need fuel right now, but let's see here. 21.3. It is. It's expensive. $2.29. And Love's is also $2.29. Communists. There's a bunch of these along the south, though. Yeah, there's places in Texas where the speed limit, the published speed limit, is 85. And that's over by San Antonio. You go west of San Antonio, and people are usually taken off guard when they see that sign. But it's there, and it's legit. Uh-oh. I got a Sorry, gotta move over here. Kind of cutting somebody off when I'm speeding up. There we go. That guy over, going back into my little hidey hole, and I'm back. Alright. I'm setting my cruise on 63. I think the speed limit in this particular stretch is 65. It goes up to 70, 75 here in the distance, but I don't, like I said, I get out of everybody's way and stay over here in the right lane. Not that I haven't had people come up. That's the same guy I was following on 610. Huh. Not that I've had a shortage of people coming up behind me freaking out. But I'm in the right lane, so leave me alone. Yeah, there's an old saying that Houston is 2 hours from Houston, and that's true because the area is so spread out. You're going through a conglomerate of settlements and areas to get anywhere. So this run I'm on right now is 1,000 miles. Not the best paying load I've ever done, but it's worth it, and it gets me out of here into an area where I can actually get cargo, because I don't have a lot here. My mother said something here a couple days ago that cracked me up, and that is, when we were kids, we played tiddlywinks with the manhole covers. Wow. And if you're old enough to know what tiddlywinks is, oh, there's another Buc-ee's right there. The sign there on your right, that's that gas station, convenience store, foreign country if it wants to be. Yeah, I did my last run down to the Mexican border. I took a camera, kind of a small one. It was probably the smallest one I've ever seen, but most Buc-ee's are huge and they go on for days. All the car dealers are located. So my wife's on a mission right now. Some people bring home stray animals, and my wife brings home stray plants. She finds plants on the clearance rack or plants that are dying and feels bad for them, and then she buys them. Usually they're 50 cents, but she gets them. And we have so many plants in our tiny townhouse, which is feeling tiny now because of the plants. She's repotting everything, so she's on a mission to freshly repot. And if I start naming the plants, she's going to beat me with a rubber noodle because I don't know the names of them, but she's got some climbing plants and some regular stuff. And we don't put our plants in the ground. We keep them potted so we can move them around as needed. What's this guy doing? Alright, you got up to speed. If you're ever driving on the highway and you're wondering if the car in front of you is an undercover, that's a Ford Exploder in front of us. The quickest way from behind, look at the roof line. You see those two little running racks on the left and the right? The police package, marked or unmarked, won't have that. Those little running, kind of like a roof rack, but it's not. That's one of the indicators right there. There's a bunch of indicators, but that's the quickest one from the distance. As we head out east here, you'll start seeing chemical plants. There's a big one there. As we crest the hill on the left, you can see in the distance. This is where they have the chemical plants. And a lot of these bridges you go over in this area are really, really tall, because very large ships go in there and get filled up with whatever they make, and then they send it around the world. So chemical plants is a big industry. Houston is the energy capital of the world. This is kind of where it all happens. But there's chemical plants everywhere. And they make whatever product they produce, they sell in mass around the world. And so you see a lot of ships offshore coming in and waiting to go in and out. Big business. A lot of people make a career. You get hired on at a plant at 18 years old, you can stay there for your entire working career. Reiterating, this is eastbound on Interstate 10. We're out of Houston here, and we're heading towards the border. I imagine I'm heading to North Carolina, and I imagine this is going to run me probably over past New Orleans, and then up 55 or 57, whatever that is right there. I think that's what's going to happen up here. But I'll film this here for a while, and then when I turn north, I'll probably come back on again. this is the excitement of the job. Woo! Listen to music, listen to podcasts, and film the road. That's a new a gas station called Cruisin'. Kroozin. Cruisin'. I like it. That's creative. 2:30:15. Yeah, out of this place. I've delivered. Every once in a while, I actually have a delivery down here to the plants. I took a load. They had a hurricane here. This was back when I was driving back during COVID. I did this job for a while. And I picked up at an electronics place up in Minnesota a pallet full of these little electronic doohickeys. And I drove down past New Orleans, down into the swamplands down there where they have chemical plants. And a hurricane had gone through recently and trashed the area, and all their electrical stuff was basically blown up. And I pulled in, they got excited. And I parked, I opened the back door, and I'm expecting him to get a forklift. And the guy, a whole army of electricians swarmed the van, and a guy got in the back, and he cut open the pallet and started reading off numbers off these boxes of these electrical things. And the guy would say, here, and he would toss the box to him. And then he'd read off another model or whatever these electrical thingies were. Another guy, he basically emptied the entire pallet in the back of my van, and they were done. They walked off, and I crashed in the van, so I had to go find a dumpster to empty it out. But that whole operation was waiting on that because that whole place was shut down. I guess they got shorted out or whatever from the storm, but they were super excited when I got there. I've been out here a few times. There's a few rest areas that are fairly new out here, and they did something. There's a company in Longview, Texas, which is East Texas, East Central Texas, and they're one of the few places I've ever discovered that recycles plastic. And I thought plastic was plastic, but apparently it comes in different grades of plastic, and if you flip a container upside down, it has a number. You know, a water bottle, a squishy water bottle is a 2, and a plastic plate's a 7 or something like that. And they take certain grades of plastic and they grind it up, and they call it fluff. And they grind up the fluff and they turn it into what looks like a 2x4. Looks like wood. It's not, but it looks like wood. And they press it and they cut it and they use it for benches and for walkways and handrails, and you've probably bumped into this stuff. You touch it, you can feel it's not wood. And it provides two things. It's recycling of plastic, and it doesn't go bad. You know, wood rots eventually. This plastic stuff looks like wood. They paint it. It's got texture. They should put texture to it, and it doesn't go bad. And it'll come back in 50 years. It's still there. And I thought that's kind of a cool idea for the recycling of plastic. And there is a rest area. It's somewhere out here. I haven't been on this road in a long time. And it was there, and it had a walkway over kind of a swamp, just get out in the car and walk around. And there was the whole walkway, the whole raised bridge and walkway was made out of this plastic board. And I kind of thought that was interesting because you got pressure washing. If it gets dirty, you pressure wash wood, you're going to damage it. You don't pressure wash plastic, you don't care. It's an RV shop. Oh, this is the outer loop right here. The toll 99 Grand Parkway, that's new. It's a toll road, of course, but that's the last loop around the outskirts of Houston. On this end, there's really nothing out here. It's built in anticipation of future growth, which they will inevitably have. Let's see, boat channels. I was talking to a guy, and he was trying to get a job somewhere, and he said somewhere on there and asked if you're a veteran. And he said, why do they ask that question? And some places there may be a legal reason to give preferential treatment to a veteran. I don't know, but people that have, the reason employers like to hire vets is they have characteristics of their personality that have been modified. You go through basic training, and one of the concepts of basic training is they beat the word why out of your vocabulary. You go up to you're working at a company and you've got a vet and the boss says, jump in the bulldozer, go down there and push that pile of dirt into the ditch, and then drive over there and pick up those 3 barrels in the scooper and bring it back here. The bulldozer veteran driver will go, okay, and go do it. A non-military person will have the tendency to go, well, why are we doing that? Why do we want to put that dirt in that ditch? What's the point of bringing? It's the why aspect. Why? How come? Explain it to me. And your boss doesn't want to hear that. And the military removes that equation. And the joke I always told people was, if the boss says, go get a hot tub, 300 gallons of green Jell-O, 2 goats, a bottle of mayonnaise, and a video camera, the vet will go, okay. You tell that to anybody else, they go, well, what's going on? Why are we doing that? Better, that boss said it, do it. End of the discussion. And that happened to me when I was flying. I was covering a contract in Sabine, which is right on the Gulf. If you look at the border between Texas, Louisiana, and the Gulf, right there in the swamp, right there in the very wedge of those 3, was operating bases for numerous helicopter companies. And I was flying a contract, and I got a call on the radio from the lady that ran the radio. So we called her mom, and mom called and said, hey, when you're done flying today, give me a call. And I said, okay. So I land shut in, doing my paperwork, and call her. I said, what's up? She goes, pack your bags and come down and cover the Freeport contract, which is down the road here, 150 miles. And I said, okay. So I started packing my bags, and the other pilot, who was not in the military, had not been in the military, I said, hey, I'm going to Freeport. And he goes, well, why are you going to Freeport? And I go, because Mom told me to go to Freeport. And he said, well, why are you going? I said, I don't really know. Is somebody coming? They told me to cover a contract. Well, is somebody going to cover this contract? I said, I assume so. And he goes, well, who? Don't know. Did you ask him? No. Well, why didn't you ask him? It doesn't matter. I was told to go down here and cover this contract, and that's as far. So this guy loses his mind and gets on the phone, starts calling. Well, what's going on? How come he's going down there? Why is there Dude, that's not for you to worry about. Your job is to do your job and do what you're told. And what happened was there was a guy down there. One of the people we were carrying was problematic to work with, and they put me on it because, quote, I get along with everybody, which is true. So they put me on. I didn't have any problems. I got highway patrol creeping up on me. He's in the show-off lane, and he's going pretty fast too. Hold on. This is called the Lost River. There, highway patrol. This is a mile marker 804. And it goes up the further east you get. So we're 800 miles from the New Mexico border right now, in case you're wondering. So that's one of the advantages of hiring a veteran, is they just, the boss says go do something, you go do it. And, okay. Don't need details, just okay. And I think bosses like that. Oh. What am I doing here? Mileage. I'm getting 20. It's a little better with this wind. I thought I was going to have a tailwind. I have a crosswind, which big boxy vans do not like crosswinds. I-10 eastbound outside of Houston. My next major town is Beaumont, and apparently it's 40-something miles away. Do you remember the movie Footloose in 1984? It was supposed to be in Beaumont. They shot it somewhere in Utah or Colorado, but they claimed it was Beaumont. And when I knew they were full of garbage, at one point there's a mountain range in the background. Big mountains with snow on it. That's when they were running around by some train station, trains or something. And look around you. Do you see any mountains here? and you're not going to see them for quite some time. I was like, wait a minute. It's not Beaumont. This is another bridge tall enough for ships to pass under. You'll notice. We're climbing right now. Road construction. Alright. Again, I can see stuff on the screen, but again, YouTube requires me not to read the screen, so I don't. I apologize for that. So, here's what I can tell you. To recap, I picked up a load finally. Picked up a load here in Houston. I'm en route to Concord, North Carolina. It's a pallet. One very low, very heavy pallet, steel pipes of some kind. This is Interstate 10 eastbound. We're fairly far out of Houston at this point. It's kind of unusual. They don't pull a lot of people over on this road, but there's a guy pulled over up here. On the right, take a peek. There's two of them here. In 2018, I got a call in September, and I remember this very specifically. In September of 2018, I got a call from a guy I used to work with, and he said, "Hey, are you still flying?" And at the time, it was kind of on and off. And he goes, I got a job for you. And here's the story he gave me. Some guy leased a Bell Jet Ranger helicopter for whatever reason. And at some point, he tried to use it as collateral to take out a loan on something. And it's like renting a car and taking it to a pawn shop and trying to pawn. It doesn't work like that. So once they found out he was trying to pull an okey-doke with this aircraft that he didn't own, they took it from him. And the guy that owned it, just like investors that will buy aircraft and lease them out. They're not pilots, they're not mechanics, they're just investors. Well, this investor washed his hands of being in the aviation business, which probably isn't a bad idea. As the saying goes, if you want to make $1 million in the aviation industry, it's very simple. Just start with $2 million, and when you get down to $1 million, you can get out. That's kind of the truth. And the helicopter had been sold, and it hadn't moved in months. And they wanted me to go get it. And it was in northern Wyoming in a barn. And if you look on the map, this is literally the name of the town. 10 Sleep. Or 10 Sleeps with an S. Don't ask. 10 Sleeps, Wyoming. And I kind of worked the deal out, and I said, all right, I'll get it, and I want to take my wife with me. And they're like, you're cool. So in September of 2018, the wife and I got to go on the ultimate adventure. We flew direct Houston to Denver, and we had to get a connecting flight to Cody, Wyoming, which is up in the northwest corner. It's a teeny tiny little itty bitty airport, and we flew up there on a very teeny tiny plane. But we got to Denver, and I've never been to their new, I'm from Colorado, but I moved out in the 80s when I joined the military. And we went to Denver International Airport, which is absolutely gorgeous. They built it way east of Houston, Denver. But since then, the civilization has kind of moved out to match it. But we landed there early in the day. Our flight wasn't until the afternoon. We had like 5 hours to burn. And we went outside the airport, and there was a lounge area away from everybody. Big fluffy chairs under a massive overhang. The temperature was perfect. The humidity was non-existent. There was a little, like a convenience store / Starbucks looking place, and a bathroom, which is everything we needed for food, and a toilet. We just laid there in this perfect temperature, light breeze, and the wife and I sat there and I said, we could just stay there forever. We really enjoyed laying there in that wind and breeze. I just, for hours, it was totally relaxing. So then we had to go get to our flight, and I don't know, it was some kind of a jet we got in. And it's one of those jets, if you've ever been in one, where you're walking down the aisle and there's 2 seats on your left, but only 1 seat on your right. You know, that's how small it was. And I'm 6'4", and I had to hunch over a little bit to walk through it. And we flew to Cody, Wyoming. And we had bags checked because I had to carry, our stuff plus my flying gear. And I went in the building, the little terminal building at this little tiny airport, and there was nobody in the building. There's like the ticket counter. There's nobody there. And I'm like, go back outside. Well, the people who work the ticket counter also unload the plane and refuel it. It's like, that's how small of an operation it was, which I got a kick out of that. And we called a taxi, a guy with a van, and we paid him, I think it was $160 to run us 135 miles to 10 Sleeps, Wyoming. And he dropped us off, and this town is so small. How small is it? It had one hotel that had 4 rooms. It was actually shockingly nice, and we spent the night in this teeny little hotel with this teeny little room. Really nice, but the bed was a double. And like I said, I'm not the smallest guy there. Anyway, we got up and we had to call the guy to get the aircraft, and we called this phone number, and within minutes this dude shows up in a pickup truck with his dog in his lap and says, "Hey, hop in." We drive a mile north of town to his barn, and the helicopter is sitting in the back of his barn covered in dust. The Jet Ranger. And I went, interesting. And it has the road. It did it for 5 months. And I had told the guy that called me, make sure it has a battery, because the battery is not going to be any good. You just don't put your jumper cables to a helicopter battery. It's a whole different system. And I need to take a good look at this thing. I open the door. It has no navigation equipment in it whatsoever. It doesn't have a GPS. It doesn't have a LORAN, even the old system. So I'm like, well, this is interesting. So I go under the seats. It doesn't have any maps in it, which isn't legal to operate without maps. I got no nav gear, no maps. I got nothing. And I'm in the middle of Nowhereville, Wyoming. And I rifle around in my bag, and I have a GPS that's the size of a pack of Camel cigarettes that I didn't even remember having in my bag from 15 years ago. And ironically, the battery still worked. So I called the guy that had me go up there, and I said, look, dude, I got nothing. I got no, all I got's this little teeny tiny. He said, wing it, do a guerrilla flight. So I opened up my phone, and I got grid coordinates to the airports. And, there's websites to go to. The grid coordinate to the airport and the frequencies. I looked at the map and said, okay, we're going to fly over here to this little airport that's 20 miles away, and make sure nothing falls off the aircraft. By maps. Well, we pulled the aircraft out, and you don't just jump in an aircraft, any aircraft to fly. I've got a pre-flight, but you don't, especially when it's been sitting. So I pulled the cover off the top, and I checked the hydraulic compartment, and there was a reservoir on top, and it's empty. I'm like, oh, jeez. I opened the trunk, and there's a case of hydraulic fluid in the trunk, telling me that this is a known issue. Okay, so it's got a leaky hydraulic. So I fill it up. I check everything else, make sure everything's tight and everything's attached, and I go, okay, let's see if this works. Started up, it ran, and it didn't start to come apart, it didn't shake at all. I ran it for a little while, shut it back down, got out, checked it, everything was still there, and I went, I guess it'll fly. So we tossed our gear in and got the wife on board, and we took off and flew to an airport about 10 minutes away, and shut it down and tested everything and resunk the fuel, and, so I went in to buy maps. Oh, we don't have any maps for sale. Oh, great. So we loaded back up again, topped off the fuel to the rafters, because there's only 2 of us in there, you're not going to overload it, and took off and headed south through central Wyoming. There is absolutely nothing in the middle of central Wyoming. There isn't a town, a road, a tree, a fence post, a rock, a dried up riverbed. There's nothing. It's a pool table. We're flying along 700-800 feet off the ground. I'm looking around going, the engine quits. We have food, water, and supplies. I said, if the engine quits, which way do we walk? And we flew across Wyoming and got to Rawlins, Wyoming, which is on Interstate 80. And, I don't remember how long it took, but we got in there, and I said, all right, let's top it back off again and get maps. I go, hey, do you have any VFR sectionals, to make me legal? And you're like, no, we don't have it because maps expire. They have drop dead dates. So no, I don't. So I'm still flying with no maps and no nav gear except this little stupid program, non-aviation GPS. Great. I wanted to go down the front range of Colorado, but I can't because I don't know where the airspace is because I don't have a map or a GPS. So we dial up Grand Junction, Colorado, and we fill this aircraft to the rafters. And a Jet Ranger is not the most powerful helicopter in the world. It's first generation turbine. And the airport sits at 7,000 feet, so you're struggling for power before you even take off. So I look over, we fired back up, and I'm pulling it off the ground, topped off to the gills, and I'm pulling 100% power. You can pull 105% for 5 seconds, but I'm pulling 100% to taxi and to hover, and the closer you are to the ground, the less power it takes. And I'm like a foot off the ground going, oh, this is great. So I kind of nudge it down the taxiway and nudge it a little more and get through my rotor wash. And once you fly out of your rotor wash, you get about a 20% boost in your lift. So I was able to get it up in the air. And we turned south, and the best climb speed in a Jet Ranger is about 60 knots, which is about 70 miles an hour. So, which is slow in the air. So I'm going 60 knots southbound, and I'm about 100 feet above the ground. And we're staying 100 feet above the ground. And my wife says, why aren't we climbing? I said, we are. The ground's coming up to meet us. So why don't you climb faster? I said, we're doing it, baby. This is all she's got. So it took a while for us to start making a little bit of a gap between us and the dirt. And we finally got up to altitude, and we were flying along at probably 8,000-9,000 feet. And I've never been over northwestern part of the state of Colorado, but there's not a lot of civilization, but it's huge mountains and giant valleys, and it's absolutely gorgeous, but you start to feel really, really insignificant. Really insignificant in these giant mountains and these ranges and gorges, and it's an odd feeling. And again, we're navigating with a handheld radio. GPS with fresh batteries now. And we're flying along, and I'm feeling, and it's getting later in the day, and we're just going to get into Grand Junction and call it. So I dial up the radio, and I can start to hear voices talking, and there's all these ridge lines ahead of us, and I'm like, the GPS is starting to wind down. I'm thinking, we better have something here closer. We're going to have some explaining to do since I don't know where we are on the map. And it was winding down to like a mile, and I still couldn't see an airport. I said, it better be over this next ridge, and sure enough, there it was. And they got us in, and we parked all by ourselves, tied it down, went and spent the night. The Yellowstone's way, somebody talked about Yellowstone earlier, and it's way on the western part of the state. I went down the middle. But we got into Grand Junction, and we landed, and we fueled up for the next day. Checked my oils and stuff. Everything was still good, which was cool. It's just another gas station, as if they don't have enough. Building another gas station over here. And the next day we took off, and flying over the Rockies was something I was looking forward to, because when I was a teenager, Russ Barger had a Piper Cub, and we could take off on that Piper Cub way up in northern Colorado on the Wyoming border, climb 800, 900 feet off the ground, and you could see mountain peaks 300 miles away. You could see the other side of the state because it's bone dry in Colorado, so there's nothing in the atmosphere to block your visibility versus down here where it's all hazy. And I thought we were going to have this beautiful view. Well, overnight, what had happened is there were a bunch of fires in Mexico. It's kind of a seasonal thing. And the Rockies had smoke haze everywhere, which kept the visibility down to about 2 or 3 miles, which, to put it mildly, sucked. So we gassed up, and I don't know, I think Grand Junction is around 500 feet. We gassed up, talked to the tower, and blasted out of there heading to the east-southeast. And again, I'm going 70 knots in a climb, and the aircraft's going, and I got GPS dialed up, the coordinates for Raton, New Mexico, which is just over the border of Colorado into New Mexico, right there on I-25, right at the other side of the mountain range. So I just want to get up over the Rockies, and we're climbing in slow motion. It's beautiful. We can't see very far again because of the haze, which, again, that was really aggravating. And we're boogieing along, and the higher you get in altitude, the less power you have. There's less power for the motor, and there's less air for the blades to grab. So we're not exactly burning holes in the sky at a colossal rate. We're just kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? We're just kind of strolling along. And there's a valley in the Mesa. I think it's called Mesa Valley. Kind of is like a farm area right in the middle of the Rockies. And then we come up on the big one. And again, I can't see very far in any direction. All I got is GPS saying fly that way. And because of the lack of visibility, the lack of navigation, the lack of maps, because they didn't have any current VFR sectionals in Grand Junction either, of course. We ended up passing at a mountain peak, Teddy's Peak, 12,500 feet is where we passed. And once you get a little over 11,000 feet, you hit the timberline, which means it can be dense, thick forests, and then all of a sudden there's little tiny trees, and then there's nothing. And it's a very short area where it transitions. So we had above the timberline. I'm like, okay, now I know. I'm looking at the altimeter. If anybody's joining late here, I got a load on board out of Houston. It's a pallet of some kind of heavy stuff, and I'm heading to Concord, North Carolina. I'm going to overnight it to Concord. And this is I-10 eastbound. We're way out of Houston at this point, kind of boogieing towards the border. Louisiana border. I'm going to follow 10, probably past New Orleans, and then head north on 55 or 57 or whatever that is up there. What's going on with this? Anyway, so we're climbing up, and we're way above the timberline, and my aircraft's starting to slow down because I'm having to reduce power because the temperature's starting to get higher because it's still got flames. It's still got fuel, but it doesn't have a lot of air, so I'm slowing down. And when I went through military training as a pilot, one of the things they do is they put you in an altitude chamber and they depressurize it to 25,000 feet. So everybody, hypoxia is lack of air in your body, and everybody feels it differently. And they want you to experience it so you know what it feels like for your personal feels. So if you're flying along at some high altitude and your oxygen system fails, and all of a sudden you notice this weird feel, you know what it is, you'll recognize it. Well, we are coming up this ridge line, and I'm following a finger up the side of this mountain, so it's open to the left and open to the right, but the ground underneath me was kind of close, because if I needed to peel away, I could go left or right. And that's kind of what I was working on. And I'm getting up here, and I can see another mountain in front of me, and I said to myself, if this isn't the top, I'm going to dive left or right. I'm going to go back down to the south, and I'm going to find someplace else to cross because this is getting ridiculous. And I'm climbing up, and my altimeter is above 12,000, and you're kind of getting to where you're supposed to have oxygen. And right about the time that thought went through my head, my fingertips started tingling, which tells me I'm in oxygen deprivation. I went, turned to the wife to say, hey, this is what's going on. And her tongue was hanging out of her mouth. She was her eyes were glazed over. My wife was gone. She was already totally into it. She was gone. I went, never mind. And right at that moment, I hit the top of this little meadow, and I was almost scraping the clouds. It was actually very beautiful. I used to have a picture of it, what happened to it. And then on the other side, it was a drop-off. And we fell. It was like a 4,000 foot drop, 5,000 foot drop on the other side, almost straight down. And I went over that little wedge between these two little peaks and descended, nosed the aircraft down, and reduced power at the same time. And I let it fall out of the sky, kind of gave up some of that hard-fought altitude. And coming through about 8,000 feet, my wife started talking again. And she was trying to explain to me how weird that felt, that she knew she was in the aircraft and she could hear me talking, but her brain just wasn't there. I said, you were pretty far gone. And we got into Raton and got gas, and then we did 2 more stops in Texas. Remember, Texas goes on for days. And we stopped somewhere and got gas, got shockingly close to running out of fuel, probably the lowest I've ever been in gas in an aircraft ever in my life. Landed in the town of Lano, L-L-A-N-O, a town that's famous for their entire police department going to jail right around this time. And then we made it back into Houston to drop the aircraft off, and that was like the ultimate guerrilla flight. And what was ironic is the guy who bought it did a bunch of maintenance to it, and then called me again, and my wife and I got to fly that same helicopter to Elizabethton, Tennessee. Tennessee, up in the mountains, and dropped it off. And that was a fun trip. And the one noteworthy thing that happened on that trip is we got stuck in weather. We had to hang out. We had some real nav gear this time. We had to hang out for a couple of days in a hotel. And the one strange thing that happened is a few days after we dropped that aircraft off, I think it was Jeff Gordon, the race car driver. He lives up there apparently, or has a vacation home. He came in on a private jet, landed, and the landing gear collapsed, and the aircraft slid to a stop on the runway at that same single runway airport in Elizabethton when that happened. And then we got a one-way rental car and drove home from there. But that was kind of an adventure. That was fun. Oh, here's where the highway splits. I-10 up here continues, it'll bend off to the left, and if you go straight, it takes you to Orange, the town of Orange and Sabine, right there on the border. And I think this lane continues on. Does it not? Yeah, this is a lane. I got cars going. Okay, yeah, I'm following 10. My big turn. Hang on, here we go. Woo! Pretty scary, huh? But when I used to fly offshore, I used to follow that road right there, and I would go down to the end of that. Way down to the end of 124. All right, I've been chewing your ear off for an hour. What I'm going to do is, if it gets more interesting this afternoon, heading north into the mountains, I'll come back on. But I'm going to let you guys go for now. I got to call the big boss lady. Take care.